Hello everyone and welcome to Cinderful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the Grey. Today's video, we're going to be looking at some tactics in Warhammer Age of Sigmar, mainly aimed at beginners of the game. Age of Sigmar is a game where the core rules are far from how the actual game is played. It tells you a lot of what to do in the game, but not how the game is actually played in any sense, and major things you need to do throughout the game to ensure your path to victory. In this series of videos, we hope to look at a few of the unsung rules in Warhammer Age of Sigmar and talk a little bit about them. First of all, today we're going to be looking at screening, what exactly it is, what it does, and how you can apply it to your games to help you win your battles, or at least get an advantage in situations against your opponent. Now, for starters, screening is generally when you put troops, either good or bad. Screens can be anything in the game. I think there is definitely a misconception that a screen needs to be a terrible unit. It just needs to be a unit that's not as important as the unit it is screening. Now, what I mean is you put a unit in front of another unit and it effectively protects the other unit from harm. Your opponent is forced to either charge this unit, shoot this unit, or do other things to this unit in front in order to get to the unit behind, thus protecting the unit behind for a longer period of time. Of course, you're not wanting to always use expensive units for your screens, and sometimes you're wanting to use cheap units in the game, but anything can perform the job of a screen at all. Even a monster can become a screen for a unit if it is in the right place at the right time, and it's less valuable than the unit it is screening. So with that said, we're going to go through and look at some videos and some outlays of ways you can apply screens to your game that I hope give you a little bit of insight into how you can use them and what exactly screens are. And so this picture right here, this is screening at its very basic. So we have a unit of Dragon Ogres trying to charge the Free Guild handgunners, but there is a screen of Blackheart Corsairs in the way. Now, the screen is of 25mm bases, and this is important because 25mm bases, so long as they are lined up in a line touching bases, they are always within 2 inch of another model in the unit. So what you can do with this is you can put them out in a nice thin line here, and you take up as much space as possible, not enabling the Dragon Ogres to charge into the handgunners behind. This is really important, so for a couple of reasons. First of all, this isn't going to draw the handgunners into combat. This means next turn, they're going to be able to shoot at whatever they want. This doesn't need to be the Dragon Ogre, so if their firepower is needed elsewhere on the battlefield, they can. They also have the ability to move, and which, of course, with most shooting units, they'll need the ability to move and shoot. Thus, you're not wanting to get them stuck in combat, because otherwise they'll lose their shooting ability and have to move out of combat and not be able to project their power across the battlefield. And to add to all the points, screening against multiple charges does change a few little things. So it is important at this point to definitely make sure your handgunners here, or your unit that is being screened, is outside of 3 inch from the back of the units. Now, what's important about this is when you're getting charged by multiple units, a unit can pile in even if it doesn't have anything in combat with it, as long as it's charged in the turn. Units can pile in either when they are in combat within 3 inch of an enemy model, or when they've charged in the turn. So this means if both these units charged, for instance, and the Dragon Ogres wiped out the Blackheart Corsairs, the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth there would be able to charge the Free Guild handgunners and pile in that 3 inch in order to get those handgunners there. So it's important to make sure that you have these ranges calculated and make sure of the weapons range that your opponent is charging the units with in order to make your screens work properly. In this case, you would need to be further away than the 3 inch because the Dragon Ogre Shaggoth has a 2 inch reach. This means you need to be at least 5 inch behind your own unit to stop that Shaggoth getting in and doing some damage if your screen was wiped out. It's also worth remembering at this point as well to watch out for units in the game with a 6 inch pile-in, because they can be major problems for your screens. You can have 2 units like this pile-in and then a 6 inch pile-in unit pile-in and bypass all your protection work that you've done with screens and get into the juicy unit behind you don't want touched. So some things to always look out for there. Now, we're going to talk about base sizes, in particular 32mm base sizes. Now, while it's rather uncommon that you're going to get 40mm base sizes that are going to be able to do anything like this, it's not unheard of, but for the purpose, I think 32mm base sizes are going to be the other main unit sort of used as screens in games. So with this, you've got a unit of 32mm Idoneth Deepkin Thralls in front of our Free Guild handgunners. Now, the Thralls have 32mm bases with only a 1 inch range. This also means that you can't, like the 25mm base Blackheart Corsairs we had before, line them up in a straight line because they won't be within an inch of each other because 32mm is larger than an inch. So what you have to do here is you have to do staggered sort of line, this zigzagging line as you can see here pictured, and just sort of put them into the zigzagging pattern, making sure you've got these triangles of 1 inch here as you can see on the right hand side, and you've got the inch at the front there as you can see, so that model in the second rank of thralls can attack as well in combat. This is good for a couple of reasons. First of all, just moving around like this on the basic principle will allow your 32mm models to get more attacks in the game, but also this means you're going to get more distance covered with 32mm screens. It's just these sort of tactics you're going to have to do, and there are places that sell movement trays that make this sort of setup really easy to do, but as long as you're pretty frank with your opponent about what you're trying to achieve, I think they'll be fine with you just trying to adjust this and making it work as best you can. But this is how you're going to have to get your screens to get as much frontage as possible on them for 32mm bases. So next we've got a screen of unit in front. So we've got our 25mm 10 model unit here in the front screening out. But however, our combat unit behind has chosen to stay within 3 inch of the front of the unit of handgunners at the front. So what we're doing here is we're actually sacrificing the handgunners. They're going to die into the Dragon Ogres, but what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to attack with our Idoneth Deepkin Thralls after the handgunners have been removed. We're going to remove models in a way that allows us to get as many of these possible through and get some attacks in. This is a great way at making sure your combat units don't lose efficiency, suffering your opponent's attacks first, and this allows you to ignore this combat because the Dragon Ogres are going to have to attack into the unit they're in combat with, into the handgunners, and thus your Thralls, once the handgunners have suffered some losses, can move in, counterattack, and do damage with no consequences. This is really good in your opponent's turn, especially if you know you've got the turn after, because it's just going to allow you to sort of play around. Now, there's other ways you can do this as well. You can also, with the handgunners here, putting your shooting unit in front, this means you're going to unleash hell with the handgunners, they're going to then die, but then you can also then pile in those thralls after and get the most out of both your shooting unit here and your combat unit. This, of course, will mean you lose the shooting unit and their ability to project power, but it does mean your combat unit is going to ensure itself getting into combat. Your opponents can play around with this and can ignore you or charge on certain points, so it's important to make sure you have points of contact that are 3 inch around so your opponent can't maximize his own damage. And if he's going to try and avoid you, he's going to use less models in the combat, thus making the screen work in other ways and allowing you to countercharge in later turns. The last little piece I want to talk about is screening versus shooting. Now, this is generally much harder to do than screening versus combat. Screening versus shooting requires you to have larger areas of ground covered. As you can see here, our Blackheart Corsairs are having to go 3 inch outside of those Ungor Raiders to stop them shooting the Idoneth Deepkin Thralls. Thus, we've got this massive gap in behind us, and we're having to just have these massive parts of the ground covered. This isn't impossible to do, but it's definitely much harder to pull off, and it does leave these open patches of ground for your opponent to come into, so it's important just to make sure we're not leaving ourselves open there in the middle. But it is another tactic you can use to stop your opponent being able to do damage to units you don't want to. There are some units in the game, like the Untamed Beast from Slaves to Darkness and Ungor Raiders, in fact, themselves, that have pre-game moves that allow you to set up these sorts of screens early in the game. With that said, that is, I hope, a little bit of a good lot of information you can use to help you with screening in your games of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, and just allow you to get a little bit more out of your units in the battlefield and play your games in a little bit better. Thank you all for watching. We hope you found this useful, and if there's any other little tactical tips you'd like to have a little video on, let us know in the comments below. Well, thank you for watching the video. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to turn those bell notifications on so you don't miss a thing when we upload on the channel. Now, next up, you can also come and chat more with us on our Discord server, which we've got a link to in the description of the video, and we've also got links there as well to our merch store on Teespring. Lastly, we'd like to give a shout out to everyone who helps support the channel via Patreon and YouTube members and in other ways. Thank you to our Patreon members: Christian Weir, James Soren, Chaos Spawn, AJC, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shop First, James Crowder, Andrew Bowen, Nathan Fee, Tim Newman, The Rising Ape, Cure Dynamic, Agu, Anthony B, MJ, and Dynet226. And thank you to our YouTube members, Green Roots Gaming, Kenton Young, Steve T, The Real Zeop, Chris Wallace, Trueriah12, Vinny, Lock Lorick, Matt Mollum, and Becca Kinska Groupie. A special thank you as well to Lady Witchfox Art, who does all the amazing art for the channel, and to Xmorphic, who does a fantastic job at helping moderate our Discord server and keep everything nice and working there. If you'd like to help support the channel in a way like we've just seen, you can do so by finding the links to both Patreon and YouTube members in the description of the video. Thank you all for watching again though, stay safe everyone, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the Grey. Ciao for now.